In this chapter, we're going to cover vendor item deal entry, which is entry for off-invoice allowances or scan allowances to help support various promotions within the Koblenz organization. Once you show into vendor item deals, you will see that you can have different filters at the very top. One of the things I always like to do or get in the habit of is once you click on vendor item deals, go ahead and click apply, and it'll show you what's currently pending. Right now, we don't have any records pending, so it doesn't show us anything. If I want to do a historical search to understand, have there been any deals I have submitted in the past, or I'm trying to verify what costs were entered because there's a backdoor receiving issue. Koblenz is showing an allowance of $2. I think I sent in an allowance of $1.80. You'll want to use the filters and look at the history at the top by selecting all records, and go ahead and put in your filters. So, okay, I know it's going to be, I want to filter on a description, and here's where your drop-down boxes. You can select from any one of these as your filters when going through the vendor item deals. If you click on like is going to give you a text search. It's always the best text search option. And what I like to do when using the like description is a % sign will indicate any number of characters or any characters. So if I want to do a deal search on flour or Pillsbury flour, what I'll do is I'll put the % sign in, I'll type the word flour, I'll put the % sign again to indicate any description after the word flour. And once I have chosen my filter here and feel comfortable with what I've input, I'll click add to add the filter, and then click apply to apply the filter. In this case, no records were returned, so there is no history out there of any item with a description that contains the word flour that has a deal. Another thing you can do to search for historical deals is search by start date. So you can choose filter by start date, and here you can choose inside range. So let's just say I want to look at any deals I submitted with a start date of August 4th. And you click on the calendar, it brings you up to date calendar. Or you can simply type in the values as well. And let's just say let's search through 8/28. Once I have that entered, click on add, and you'll see it's added my filter below. But as you'll see by the filter bar, I also have the description of flour in there. And I don't want to search for an item with just flour in the description. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this filter by clicking on the X. So it's only showing all my records, current and historical, with a date range, start date range of 8/4 to 8/28 of 2019. And since these are the filters I want, I feel comfortable with it, I'm now going to hit the apply button to bring up this historical data. And as you can see, it returns some results for me now showing here's all the deals that are out there that have been submitted with a start date within the date range of 8/4 to 8/28. If I want to sort on any one of these columns here, I can click on UPC column, and it's going to sort it by lowest to largest. Or if I want to sort by start date, I can click on start date, and it's going to sort it oldest to newest, all depending on how you want to look at it. There's more records below, so use your scroll bar on the right-hand side to scroll down to the bottom. You'll see it's returned 64 different results and 2 different pages. So if I can't find what I'm looking for on this first page, using my scroll bars on the right-hand side, what I can do is click on the right arrow to go to the second page to try and find what I'm looking for. But going through it, it'll identify, what deal amounts have been submitted, what the net unit cost is, start date, end date, so on and so forth. For vendor item deal entry, it's best recommended to use this for if you're only entering 1 or 2 or 3 UPCs at a time. If you're doing more than that, it's going to be simpler to use the item deal template. So I'd recommend going to the item deal template chapter if you want to enter multiple UPCs. It's a lot quicker process. So vendor item deals, if I'm looking to do 1 or 2 UPCs, I start by working my way left to right across the top. So I'll click on the UPC field, and you can see it has a search magnifying glass. Otherwise, if I know what the UPC is, I can simply enter that UPC. Otherwise, if I'm not sure what that UPC is, I'll have to click on the magnifying glass to bring up my item file. Once your item file shows up, again, there's 8,000 records here, so to filter it down, you'll want to use the filters within here. And probably, filter based upon description or vendor item number or UPC. So if I know what my UPC prefix is of the group I want to look for. I'll choose filter by UPC. They'll go ahead and say, well, let's use like again. And let's just say I want to use the UPC filter of look for a prefix of 38,000 or UPC contains 38,000. I'll use my % sign, which means any characters before. Type in 38,000 as my UPC prefix, % sign for the afterwards or trailing digits of the UPC. Once I'm comfortable with that, I will add my filter. It shows up here in the filter option. And once I'm comfortable or know that this is the right filter I want to use, I'll go ahead and click on apply. As you can see, it's now brought up everything with a UPC containing 38,000. So once I find the item I want to utilize, in this case we'll just say Kellogg's Corn Flakes, I'll simply double click on that and the record will populate within the item table below. So now that the record is populated, I'm just going to work my way left to right. It has the UPC, it has the vendor item code listed, it has a description listed. These fields aren't editable. Size description you'll see is blank, but that will populate once we actually add the record. So at this point, I just need to be concerned with whatever the orange headers are, as those are the required fields. Anything in orange is a required field. Anything in black is not required. So I'm going to hop over here to cost zone, which is my first required field. And you'll see it defaults to 1. If I'm not sure what cost zones are, I can reference my quick, easy tips and hints document that was provided to me during training. Or I can click on the magnifying glass and it'll bring up a list of available cost zones. If you're not sure which stores fall under which cost zones, go to the vendor maintenance chapter, and in there it will cover how to reference which stores fall under which cost zones. But since I only have one listed here, I'm going to choose this cost zone of 1 by double clicking on it. You'll see it populates in here. If I want, I can also just type the number 1 and then tab over to the next field. Allowance code. Allowance code is going to be the allowance type. So again, you'll see a magnifying glass. Click on that to reference which options are available. It's usually only going to be the 2. It's going to be number 1 for an off-invoice allowance, as it says right here, or code number 3, which is a scan down amount. So in this case, I want to use a DSD off-invoice allowance. So I'm going to double click on allowance code number 1, meaning off-invoice allowance. And now coming over here, it's going to give me the deal amounts. On the deal amount, it's always going to be listed in case format. So whatever the deal amount is that you're entering, just know that it's entered at the case level. One specific call out is if you're used to our CASIP forms, the scan amount on our CASIPs has been listed as a per unit, but note that on here, it needs to be listed in a case amount format. So if I have a case packet 12, it's a 10-cent per unit scan, I want this to be $1.20 per case entry here for a scan amount. But since we're doing off-invoice allowance, I'm going to go ahead and put in my off-invoice allowance amounts on the deal amount. Then I'm going to tab over to the start date. Coborn's Inc. policy is any deal that is being submitted should be given to us at least 30 days ahead of time to ensure that we can accurately review it and then provide any sort of TPR or program support behind it at the time it goes into effect. I understand there are times where you realize there's a certain flavor or something that may be missing from an allowance group, and you need to go in and add that with a start date of tomorrow, and that's okay when those instances show up. But for the most part, we need you to follow a 30-day lead time minimum on providing information to us. So now that I'm here, I'm on the start date field. I'm going to click on the calendar to pull up the calendar. Otherwise, if I know what the date is, I can simply enter that. As you can see, it's currently showing a historical of July 29th. This system actually won't let you put in a historical date. So per Coborn's policy, let's just come over here and let's choose October 7th, which we know is at least 30 days out. And now I have to enter an end date. We want this deal to run for 4 weeks. So again, we'll click on the calendar to pull up our calendar. We'll come down here, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. So we're going to choose an end date of November 1st. So once we choose that, you can see it populates here October 7th through November 1st. Mixed match field is not orange. There's no need to populate it, but price type field is. The price type field for us is an indicator as to what kind of program you're submitting this offer for. You can see it currently defaults to a 3, but like the other fields, click on the magnifying glass to see what's available for options. Price type 1 is regular or regular price. That'll really shouldn't be used in the case of deal entry. Your deal entry should support one of 3 different programs. Price type 2, which is just a regular in-store TPR. It's not going to be advertised anywhere. It's just a deal that we have ongoing. So if it's an in-store TPR, you should choose price type 2. If the deal is in support of a weekly ad, go ahead and choose price type 3. If the deal is in support of a program such as an image wall, dollar basket, in-cap display program, any sort of in-store display program, go ahead and choose number 5, which shows as TLB or truckload buy. In this case, I want this to support a TLP program, so I'm going to choose price type number 2. And now you can see I have all my orange fields entered, a cost zone of 1, which is all stores, allowance code of 1, which is an off-invoice allowance, a deal amount of $3 per case, my start, my end date, my price type of 2 for a TPR program. I feel comfortable with that, so I'm going to hit the plus button. I'm going to add the record. So as you can see, the record has been added below and is ready for submission and review by the category manager. Now, the common question that's going to come up is, what happens if I submit deals that overlap? When deals overlap, if it's a same price type, so if you submit an off-invoice allowance and an off-invoice allowance within the same date window, only one of those amounts will be active at one point in time. So let's just use the same example again, 38,00110, which is my Kellogg's Corn Flakes. And let's just say I have an ad planned the week of 10/21. So I have a $3 per case off-invoice allowance going all month. But for the week of the ad, I want a deeper deal. So I'm going to choose October 21st or 20th, which would be the week of the ad. It's going to run October 20th through October 26th, which is going to be the week of the ad. And we want to be an off-invoice allowance. So we're going to choose 1 again, off-invoice allowance. And during the week of the ad, we want the off-invoice allowance to be a total of $4.80. Since this allowance is off-invoice, and we already have the off-invoice allowance active, only one of these will be active at any point in time. So if we want this to be for $4.80 off-invoice allowance during the week of the ad, we need to put the full $4.80 allowance amount into this field. Don't put the difference, which would be $1.80, because only one amount will be active at one point in time because the allowance codes are the same. So if they're the same, you need to put the full amount of what you want the deal to be during the overlapping window. So in this case, we want the full deal to be $4.80, so we're going to enter $4.80. We have the week of the ad entered. In price type 3, this is for an ad, so we're going to reference the table. Price type 3 for an ad, yep, that's what we want. We're going to double click on 3, and then we're going to hit plus to add the record. And now you'll see below, the way this is set up currently, from 10/7 to 10/19, there will be a $3 off invoice in effect. The ad will kick in on 10/20 through 10/26, which will have a $4.80 allowance in effect. Then from 10/27 to 11/1, the $3 off invoice allowance will go back into effect. Now let's say I submitted this record right here. I submitted it as an off invoice allowance. I meant for it to be a scan. So I see I submitted it. It's still in open status, meaning the category manager hasn't approved it yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this record. I'm going to click on delete. Oops, I am not going to click on delete. What I can do is go back in, click on the allowance code, and update this to scan. So I change that from a 1 to a 3. And now it says that I have a scan in effect. Now the thing to keep in mind is if the allowance codes are different, they will add together. So in this case, while we want a $4.80 deal in totality effect during this window, because I have a $3 off invoice allowance deal, I need to put the difference in the scan amount column. So in this case, $1.80. So because the deals are different, or the allowance codes are different, the deal amounts will stack on top of each other. Or if the deal allowance codes are the same, it will be one or the other. Very important to keep that in mind. Or if you have any questions on how it should be set up, please reach out to your category manager. So as we have this deal set up now, it's going to be a $3 off invoice allowance in effect from 10/7 to 11/1. And then during the week of the ad, which is 10/20 through 10/26, the scan of $1.80 per case will be in effect. So once I've entered that information, 10/20 is right, validate all the information is correct, and now we should be good to go. You'll see it processed now that I clicked on a different row, and it has accepted the deal. That covers the deal entry.